Hello. Meru Parvata on the top of the Kalpavruksha tree. That means whatever you want, it will give you, and that's the kind of capacity it has. But then the problem is that he himself does not want anything. He is completely, totally satisfied. And in fact, one of the reasons what he says that Mrityu does not come and touch him is because that he has that total sense of satisfaction within himself, is completely satisfied. That's where basically the Vasishtha asks that Charitam Jagataha Koshe Vyavaharavatam Api Katham Vigaharajendra Dehamrityu Nabadhyate. That means to say, Deham Mrityuhu Nabadhyate. Mrityu does not touch the body. And how that can be possible? Bhushundu says that Dosha Mukta Phala Prokta Vasana Tantu Santati Hridina Gratita Yasya Mrityuhu Tamna Jigamsati. These are the set of shlokas where Bhushundu says Mrityuhu Tam na Jigamsati. It does not touch. The death does not wish to touch him, wish to kill him, so that he surpasses the death every time. That means to say there is nothing like a limit where he is limited by the death, kind of a thing. Asha yamna dahatyantaha mrityuhu tamna jigamsati. The idea is that it's not the question of what you get to free yourself from the mrityu. Whatever that you get, mrityu definitely ends you. But what happens is that if you don't have the desire, if you are not caught by the desire, then the death will not touch you. The idea that he is given here by saying that it is the Kalpavruksha is something which can give you anything that you want. But in spite of the fact that anything that you want, the time will definitely run towards the death. And actually every day that you are spending that you are earlier there used to be this calendar which used to have dates on the calendar, and every day passes that you have to tear off that particular day. Actually it is the number of days towards it's the calendar date, but actually the number of days that is left for you is that you are trying to tick it off one after the other, so that you are closing into death. Now says that the death is basically of all the sensory organs, all the whole system, and the system will be worn out the more and more that involves in this particular thing. Indriyanam jarayanti tejaha, that's what Vedanta talks about it. That means the tejas of the indriyas that go away the more that you involve in the world, in the material world outside. So it may be the material world coming from the Kalpavruksha. It may be coming from some extraordinary gift that is given to you. The more and more riches, the lot of facilities, all those things are given. But in spite of all those things, that Mrityu definitely is going to touch you. So therefore, and it will be faster if you are involved more and more into these sensory organs, because you are wearing out very much. That's what is the idea that Vedanta talks about, saying that Indriyanam jarayanti tejaha. So therefore, Bhushundu is somebody who doesn't have any desire. He's so trupti inside, so satisfied inside. Therefore, ashayamna dhahatyantaha. Asha means desire. Desire only burns you. And here, ashayamna dhahatyantaha. That means I don't have asha, therefore that there is nothing which can really burn me. Mrityuhu tamna jigamsasi. Mrityu will not touch you. In fact, in the original Yoga Vasishtha, there are several of these things that are there. But in this essence of Yoga Vasishtha, he selected a few of them. Hridina gradhita yasya mrityuhu tamna jigamsasi. Another very important aspect is that our own heart has so many pains, so many hits, so many accidents that are there. That means to say that you are attached to so many things, and then the loss of that, what is that attachment, is all having impact on your heart. That's why they say that, so a person who is going through a lot of difficulties in the life, and then he is liable for heart attack. He can get heart attack. So therefore, that they don't want to give him harsh news, bad news, difficult news, because he cannot take it. Because every news that comes like that is going to hit on his heart. So therefore, hridimna gradhita yasya mrityum tamna jigamsasi. Dosha mukta pala prokta. That means to say, the food that is there is dosha muktaha. That means absolutely without any blemish in that. Vasana tantu santati. There is no question of vasana aspect that is there. Such a person, mental impressions are not there, it just freely flows. And when the day is freely flowing for such a person, there is nothing which is really binding him. Kamakrodha vihino yaha mrityuhu tamna jigamsasi. Another very important aspect is that whatever that really troubles us are these kama krodhas, or the arishad vargas that they say. These are the 6 different, ari means enemies, 6 different types of enemies that are there. They are there within us. And what are these arishad vargas? It is kama, krodha, lopa, moha. These are the things. And all these things are born out of ego. So that means to say, the moment that you nurture your ego has all these things that are really disturbing, developing within you. And these are the things which also work on your system, on your heart. Therefore, kamakrodhati hino yaha adi, that means to say all these 6 different arshad vargas that are there. Hino yaha, where they are not there. Mrityu tamna jigamsasi. Death does not even touch you. Yasya chittam suvishrantam pade paramapavane nachanchalam mano yasya tam mrityuhu na jigamsasi. Paramapavana, that means the highest state of abode of peace, abode of tranquility, abode of supreme being, the divinity. One who experiences that divinity within all the time. Pade paramapavane suvishrantam. It's a very beautiful word. Vishranta itself is something like a relaxed. And suvishrantam, that means to say, you have entered into that kind of a relaxed state which is of your own, of something which is not a product of something but which is within itself. And yasya chittam suvishrantam, where the chitta enters into that silence, where the chitta enters into that mauna, it is prakarshena, that means to say it's extraordinary degree of mauna. Shanti, we say prashanti, prakarshena shanti. So this is one, he calls it as suvishrantam, is that prakarshena shanti, pademe paramapadya pavane, nachanchalam mano yasya. There is no possibility of mind to become chanchala, because the thing is that mind becomes chanchala when there are different things to be approached. When all those things are there, the mind becomes chanchala. Then where there is no chanchala, mano, yasya, tam mrityuhu na jigamsasi. When the mind chanchalata is not there, mrityu does not touch you. And that means we have seen that the objective world is there outside, vritti is there, and then beyond that is what is called as swarupa. Objective world definitely is having the quality of coming and going. It will have death behind it. And your all other things like vrittis that are there, relationship, involvement and all those things, activity that is there. As long as the objective world is there, these things are there. Once that is not there, then naturally, at that point of time, then all those things also dissolve. With the object, all the interaction with the object also dissolves, because the interaction with the object has the purpose, reality, because of the object outside. Like, for example, the interaction with the object outside, the vritti, what mind creates, is like the way that the shadow, object is there, then the shadow is there. When the object itself is not there, where is the question of shadow? So therefore, that object itself is dissolved, in which case that chanchalam hi mano yasyaha, na chanchalam mano yasyaha. There, chanchalata itself is not there, completely dissolved. You are there, you are beautifully enjoying the world, like a child that you are involving in this world, but no chanchalata in the mind. Yasya tam mrityuhu na jigamsasi. Then death does not even touch you. Ete brahman mahadosha samsara vyadhihetavaha managapina lumpanti chittam ekasamahitam. Sage, these great faults, that means all the list of the things that he has given in the form, which are the cause of the disease of worldly existence. And they are the cause of disease in this worldly existence, and do not seize the mind, which is firm and composed even a little. The mind which is composed, which is peaceful, even for a little while, then these things diseases do not touch you. You can free yourself from that easily. That means a small little disturbance comes, immediately you can reflect on that, reflect on yourself, self-awareness, and say that no, I don't have to be affected by that. That inner freedom that you recognize. The world outside is something which is anyway coming and going quality, and then you can be free from that. And that is the time when you are not anymore in the objective world outside, or the chitta, which is supposed to be having all these vrittis, but you are in the swarupa, you are in the self. And that being in the self is the way that he says that managapina lumpanti chittam ekasamahitam. Ete brahman mahadosha samsara vyadhihetavaha managapina lumpanti chittam ekasamahitam. The mind, which is firm and composed, even for a little, that's what is. Mahasreshta, Sarva Sankalpa Varjita, Sarva Dukha Kshayakari, Sarva Saubhagyadayini, Karnam Jivitasyesham Pranachinta Samashritaha. Atmachinta Mahasreshta. This that means being in the self, not being in the object outside. Vastu Chinta, as against that, this is Atma Chinta. When you are in the Chinta of the world outside, it is called as Vastu. Whereas the Chinta, being in the self, that means to say that Chinta about the world does not exist for you. Even the Chinta of getting a heaven, getting somewhere, liberation, even these things belong to the world outside. Somebody who is free from all those things is the one Atma Chinta Mahasreshta. That means to say it is extraordinary. The contemplation of the self, destitute of all ideation, is the most excellent. There's no ideation that's going on. And all that is dissolved is the most excellent state, means that causes the destruction of all sorrows and increases all blessedness. So, Mahasreshta Sarva Sankalpa Varjitaha. Bhagavad Gita also says Kama Sankalpa Varjitaha. Kama, that we give up, but Sankalpa also we give up. There is no Sankalpa also that is there. Sankalpa is sometimes which is supposed to be useful, pious, and good. That means, again, is something which is negative. To be in the positive is what is called, what requires a sankalpa. That means that I take a sankalpa to do good work, I take a sankalpa to do some puja, some dhyana, some meditation. These are all necessary. Minus that sankalpa, what happens is that your mind goes helter-skelter and you don't have any rudder in life. That's not the most of the people just go. as the way life takes it, and one day that life ends. This is what is going on in the form of mechanically or robotic way that you are moving. From that robotic way of whatever that is moving, you take a sankalpa. It may be easy, simple, short sankalpa, or much more rigorous depending upon your ability and the way that you enjoy. So once you take that sankalpa, it is something which can put you in the right direction. But even that's also something which is basically that you have created a boundary against yourself. It is just to see that you save from the outside. But you come to a level where this sankalpa doesn't remain as any more sankalpa. You have transcended the sankalpa. The transcending the sankalpa is a sarva sankalpa varjitaha. That means you rise above that sankalpa, and there is no question of any ideation. That means a particular thing that you need to do, that kind of thing is not there. Is the most excellent means that causes the destruction of all sorrow. Sarva dukkha kshayakari. Dukkha is in the state of mind. Dukkha is in the activity of the mind. Dukkha is in demand that you want to get it. It's a very interesting thing. What you want, if you get it, is a very, then what happens is that you put the effort and all that you can get it. Then you say that, wow, you got it. It means it's so simple, so easy. That means you can go for something better, something more. You are capable of doing something better. So you put yourself a higher benchmark. So every gain does not stay for long as a gain, but shortly, immediately, that you try to put a higher mark that you put it. And then once you do not get it, first of all, that it requires so much of an effort. After all that effort, if you don't get it, then you feel miserable. So this is how basically we are trying to move our benchmark forward. And that's what happens with every desire that is being fulfilled. So therefore, dukkha is constantly there with us. And sarva dukkha kshayakari. The moment that there is no benchmark at all, sankalpa varjitaha, where is the question of benchmark? Sarva dukkha kshayakari. There is no dukkha at all. All the dukkha is removed. So that means it causes the destruction of all sorrows. And sarva saubhagya dayini. And this saubhagya is the feeling of that you are absolutely one with the divinity, absolutely satisfied. You are vibrant. You become yourself lively. You don't have to do something extra to be lively. You are lively. Sarva saubhagya dayini. Once you are that, then every bhagya is yours. It's not that you have to get so many things. Actually, why he calls it as sarva saubhagya dayini is that bhagya means something that you are getting, and then saubhagya in the right direction maybe, and then sarva saubhagya, whatever that in the right direction, whatever that you get it gives you elation, it gives you satisfaction. That's what is the purpose of getting all those things. If it does not give you satisfaction, that means to say actually that you are becoming miserable. But then you feel satisfied. That's a wonderful quality. You are happy, you are blissful. But then what happens is that any moment, any particular thing, whatever that happens, you are always in the state of satisfaction and the state of blissfulness. And that's what is sarva saubhagyadayini. Once you don't have desire, don't have any expectations of whatever, then you are in the sarva saubhagyadayini. Karanam jivitasyeham pranachinta samashirtaha. So now this is what is the long cause for my long life. This is cause for the long life, and it is something which is also gained by the samashiritaha pranachinta. Through the pranachinta we get it. Idea why Bhushandu says that pranachinta, because that there is in the Brihat Yoga Vasishtha, the question comes, the original question comes. We are saying that why did you pick up pranachinta? He says that, atmachinta is very difficult. Only great people that they can take. I'm a very simple, ordinary person. Samashritaha, whatever that pranachinta, atmachinta can give you, and that state even the pranachanta can give. Therefore, I have picked up the pranachanta. So the moment that Bhushandu says that the pranachanta, then immediately Vasishtha has the question on that particular thing. Eva mukte maya prushtah pranachanta kimuchyate. So and then I asked him, that's what Vasishtha is telling Rama. I asked him, pranachanta kimuchyate, what do you mean by pranachanta? Bhushundo mam tata prahaha. Then Bhushandu now tells to me, pranapano iti shrutau urdhvatah kila dehasmin prastute anilobhubhe. Now he gives the whole, goes into the details of pranachanta, prana idea. It says, when told by the Bhushandu, was asked by me, what is spoken by the contemplation of prana? He then told me the two life winds, that means to say the vital air that is there, or prana that is there, is called prana and apana, are indeed spread in this body upwards and downwards. It gives upward and downward pranapana. Pranapana is like used as a phrase indicating the to and fro motion of the prana, which is up and down, is the way that they talk it. But actually, literal meaning of pranapana is apana is the upward portion. Adho gacchati apana, downward force. Urdhvam gacchati udana. And that's what is from yoga text that we have. Prana is something different, apana is something like this, and udana. When you take all these pancha pranas, that's what is the definition. But whereas, as a samasapada, as a phrase that when people use it as pranapana, which means actually to and fro motion, upward and downward motion. Upward and downward motion is also very useful idea, saying that when you exhale, that means actually you are sinking in, you are throwing out your air, whereas inhaling, it is like going in the upward direction. So therefore, prana is supposed to be upward, apana is supposed to be downward. In that way, it is the samasapada, it is the dual. Like Ramakrishna Paramahansa uses samasapada, which was there those days, very popular, is the kamini kanchan. That means to say basically the women in gold, indicating that your attraction towards the world. It's not the question particularly women, particularly gold. Its the idea is most of it is anything that is there attractive in the world and then you get attached to it is what is called as kamini kanchan. And Ramakrishna, in literature, several times it has been used. Unfortunately, what happened is that is literally translated into Ramakrishna books. So therefore, they say Ramakrishna was a hater of women because he was always cautioning about women and gold. But person who really did the puja of Shodasha, Upasana, that means to say, washed the feet of Sharda Devi, and he also had the 5 kanyas, and then he did touch their feet and all that he has done. So he cannot have any animosity, any anger towards the women. It was a phrase that was used as kamini kanchan, like that. Pranapana is many times used as a phrase, and indicating that prana means it's an upward, that means say inhalation, and apana is that it's a downward force or exhalation. So here he gives the idea of prana apana, upward and downward force, are to and fro motion, and these things, and what he says is that this prastutim anilo ubho urdhvatah pranapano iti shrutau urdhvatah kila dehesmin prasrute anilobhubhe. So the prana and apana are indeed spread in the body upward and downward. Seemingly elusive concept of prana and its manifestation is fundamental in the yogic schools. Prana, its various functions derived from the bioenergy operating through various physiological channels. Respiration is considered direct function of prana. Effective means of control of bioenergy leading to the cessation of thought and the attaining of superconsciousness. So this is what the explanation is given. And Kalebara Mahayantraha. Now Kalevara Mahayantraha Vahago Shramahinayo Hrudakasharka Shashinoho Agnishosha Shoshaswarupamo Irupayoho Jagrat Swapna Sushupteshu Sadaiva Samarupayoho Dullakshya Vidyamanapi Gatihi Sukshmataranayoho Pranapano Ubhoyete Spandashakti Sadagatihi. The more subtle movement of these two vital energies, that is prana and apana, which drive direct or directly great mechanism this body without fatigue, and which is like the sun and the moon in the ferment of the heart, which are the nature of the Agni and Soma, are the deities symbolic of the fire and water, which are always of equal nature in the waking, dream, and deep sleep state, is difficult to be pursued through existing. These two vital forces, prana and apana, are always in motion or active. So let's try to look at this particular thing. This Kalevara Mahayantraha, this body that is there, Vihagau, this Pakshi, this whole extraordinary, wonderful instrument that is there right from the birth, mother's womb when it started. This prana apana, that means to say this to and fro motion, is something which is holding it. Now, what is the significance of it? What is the grandeur of it is that the whole creation is in the form of cycles. The whole nature is in the form of cycles. That means to say that there is birth and the death, and after the death, again the birth is come. So that means it's in the form of cycle. The same way the day and night is a cycle. Srishti, Pralaya is the cycle. At the individual level, it is birth and death. But at the global level, it is the universal level, it is called as Srishti and Pranaya. Srijati and then death, that goes on. Small level it goes on. It may be small cycles to the big cycles. But then this is a cyclical activity that's going on. In fact, this cyclical activity is what is called as the life. And that's what is Jagat. And that's what Spandana Matrameva Jagat. Spandana is what is called as the Jagat. This Spandana is in various ways that is there in our system and outside also. Psychology goes through this particular up and down. Body goes through this particular thing, and then even the birth and death. Seasons are going like that. Look at the way everything is going on in the form of cycles. Somebody who penetrates the cycles and goes through both these things with this awareness, that's what is Bhushundu. We all go down and then we don't carry the memory of the wakeful state when we go to the sleep. The same way, in the life state, whatever that is there, we don't carry the memory with us in the death. And then after the death, once again, we come back to the life, we don't carry the memory. For us, it is like fresh every time. We have forgotten that. We have, just because that we don't have memory, does not mean that it does not exist. Like the way that you see your own picture, which is when you are a child, just born in the mother's womb, and then you came out. And at that time, whatever the picture is there today, when you see it, you can't even recognize your picture. That means to say that you didn't have memory of that time, what you were looking like. You might have seen several times the mirror at that time, but you don't recollect yourself on that. So that means to say whatever that was there, memory, that is lost. Memory lost does not mean that the situation is gone. Situation was there. Only thing is memory is not there. So what we are interested is only in the memory, and as far as that memory goes, that we recollect. Other than that, we don't recollect. A great difficulty, people try to do this, all this, what is called as the regression analysis, out of which they go to the memory for just one life, or maybe that, I don't know whether really that the memory of previous life, or maybe that some conjure that has happened in the mind that you imagine that these are the things that could be things. When you look at, like for example, you extrapolate it, whatever that your childhood days, that you try to extrapolate it, and it goes back into a level where beyond the childhood. So whatever it may be, all that is there, but it just goes to only a small little level, but it does not go beyond that. But then this life is going on through this particular cycle, and Kalevara Mahayantraha Vahayo Shamahinayoho. So therefore, this particular cyclical way of that this life is there, therefore it is shramahina yoho. That means it does not have the wear and tear. Because of the cyclical activity of prana and apana, that there is no wear and tear. Yes, we are wakeful activity, but then you go to sleep, you replenish yourself. You may not 100%, you may not replenish 100% of yourself, but quite a large amount that you replenish. That's the reason why before going to bed that you feel so tired. But when you get up, you see that you are again ready for all kinds of activity. So the way that it says that Hridakasharka Shashinoho Amni Amni Shomaswa Rupayoho. It goes into that Akasha, it goes into the Hridaya Akasha. That means the space that is there within, and there when it goes into that space, that's where it completely relaxes. So Hridaya Akasha Arka Shashinoho. Now this prana and apana, these two things, prana is supposed to be equated to the sun, and then apana is equated to the moon. But also we have that in yogic language also the same thing that we see, that yin and yang, whatever is supposed to be sun, moon activity. So both these things, they go into this akasha, into that space. It just gets merged into the space. Once it goes into that, merges in the space, Hridakasha, Shashino, Agnishomava, Swarupayoho. So Agni Shoma Swarupayoho. So everything goes into that and then completely quietens. So that what happens next day when you get up, you are back into the energy, you are back into the activity. And similarly, that these particular states that are there is in the form of Jagrat Sapna Supteshu Sadeva Samarupayo. So with this prana apana that is there, inhalation, exhalation that's going on, the prana activity that is there, it is something which is really carrying it this way throughout the day. It's like the way that the bird is carried by this prana and apana, and then it rests in the when it is going into the peaceful state, and then again you are rejuvenated and then activity starts. The same way that the same prana and apana, this cyclical activity that is there is the one which is responsible for Jagrat Sapna Susuptesu. There is a balance that is created, Samarupayoho, the balance, Sadaiva Samarupayoho, the Jagrat Sapna Sushupti, wakeful, dream and deep sleep state. And it creates that kind of a balance between these three, a harmony between these three, so that we are surviving. Durlaksha vidyamanapi gatihi sukshmatarayo nayoho. Whatever that happens, and this is so difficult, durlaksha vidyamanapi. To know that it is so difficult because it's so subtly it is going and doing an activity, sukshmataray taranayoho. So these two energies, prana and apana, are always in motion and it's constantly going on in the deep sleep state, wakeful state and dream state, and even beyond that, when you are in that any state, this is something which is going on. Only thing is that grossly it's going on at the gross time. When you go to subtler and subtle level, at subtle level it goes on. Durlaksha vidyamanapi gatihi sukshmataramayo pranapano ubhovyete spadda shaktihi sada gatihi. So durlaksha vidyamanapi, it's absolutely not possible. It's so subtle. Vidyamanapi gatihi sukshmataraya taranayo. Yeah, you know, this we can try. Before going to bed, when you did the pranayama, and after that pranayama, just observe the breathing in and breathing out. And then you see that how subtle it goes on, how insignificantly it just goes on, very deeply, somewhere at the way background it's going on. And the moment that you fall into a sleep, actually that way when it goes into that, it helps you to fall into sleep. And when you fall into sleep, then nothing is there in front of you. You did not realize it. This is what Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, similar condition is explained by Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, saying that a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. The doll itself is dissolved. So where is the question of measuring the depth of the ocean? So you can't hold on to that subtle activity of prana apana that's going on. Prana apano bhavyate spanda shakti sadagatihi. Very important thing is that modern science looks at the basis of the whole creation is energy model that they have taken, whereas we have taken the model called as dhvani, sound. Indian philosophy taken the sound dhvani. The reason why dhvani has been taken as the basis for this whole creation, two reasons. One thing is that you see that anything that you see in this creation is having this aspect of duality, aspect of day and night, aspect of seasons going. It's all in the cyclical way. You can see everywhere the cycle there once it goes up and goes down. So the cycle that you can see in the nature, everywhere that is there, maybe small cycle to big cycle, a huge cycle like the way that the creation and dissolution, kalpa, even that's also cyclical way it is going on. So this creation, when you look at it, it's in the form of a cycle. So when you want to go to the original aspect of it, it must be in the form of cycle. And one which is there in the form of cycle is what is called as spandana. Same thing when you are sound, when you can slow it down, all that what you see in the sound is in the form of a sinusoidal wave, a cycle that is adapted. So therefore that our people very clearly say that when there's a sound, it is not just a sound that you hear, but then subtler than that sound is that when you make this wave of the sound, slow it and so slow that it's still a wave, but then you cannot hear anything because that your instruments are not fit enough to listen to that. It's coarser than the sound that it can go. See, this is the reason why they say that the sound can penetrate into that silence in the form of spandana and then go to the Brahmasthiti. So that is how Indian philosophy looked at the spandana, which is supposed to be prana spandana, is subtler aspect of the same, deeper aspect of the same spandana in the form of sound that we have. So durlaksha vidyamanapi gatihi sukshmatara nayogo pranapano upayate spanda shakti sadagatihi. It's like a pendulum which moves on one side, moves on the other side. And because that pendulum moving up and down, that's how basically the time is clicking. The time is created. So the time is Brahman. The time is the creation, in the first creation in the form of Brahman, of the Brahman, is in the form of time. So therefore the spandana is the one that created. Urdhvagastutiti pranapano punaha avakstitaha. The prana exists going upwards and the apana exists downwards. Urdhvagastustita prana. Prana goes in the upper direction. Apanaha punaha avakstitaha. Brings down the apana, brings it down. Now therefore apana, it's a downward journey. Therefore it is something which is effortless. It just happens. Prana is something which is effortful. Prana is something which is responsible for creation. Apana is responsible for dissolution. Actually, that's one of the reasons why when somebody dies, even you closely watch him, exhales, but then after that, the inhalation does not continue. That's where the respiration, because inhalation involves an activity, involves some energy, and he doesn't have that energy. So apana is the one which takes you, which takes you away, which is supposed to be death. Prana is supposed to be the life, apana is supposed to be death. We are within the cycle of day and night, are the prana and apana, are the birth and death. So every time that you are exhaling, actually that you are dying, a bit of you is dying. And then again you inhale because that you come back to life. So this is what is going on. Only last point is that last moment, when there is no more inhalation takes place, death moment, you are established yourself in the death, and then every other organ in the body, also the spandana, slowly recedes. Only yogis are the people whose prana goes in the upper direction, goes into the sahasrara. That's why it is kapala moksha. Now, The goal of this particular culture is to see that everybody goes to that sapala moksha, spiritual journey, spiritual awakening. But how many really goes? Because they don't go because they are so much caught up at the other levels, other chakras. They're gotten into various other aspects. Even at the time of death, that's what is going on. As a result of it, what happens? It goes through some other channel, it's some other hole. But then, just for people's satisfaction, that they try to symbolically, that when before that they send the body for burning, they hit it on the head. What's the point in hitting on the head where prana is already gone? Hours before has already gone. Now we just symbolically hit on the head. But the person who is really conscious is the one who tries to see that the prana goes in the upper direction. While he is living here, he practices in such a way that how he can move the prana in the upper direction. Urdhvagastu gatha pranaha apanaha punaha avakstitaha. Bhashyonmukatah prananam Chirajivita karanam. What is that which is responsible for Chirajivita? He gives beautiful ideas. Apanastam gate pranaha yavat nabhyutito hyutihi hridihi tavat sa kumbhakavasta yogibhi yanu bhuyate. That means to say anubhuyate, yogihi yan anubhuyate. He understands, he experiences that. What is that? Apanastam gate pranaha. The apana is dedicated to prana. Yavat nabhyutito hridihi tavatya kumbhaka. So between the apana and prana, that means to say exhalation, and then before it becomes inhalation. Exhalation is over, but before it becomes inhalation, that means to say throwing out the air, apana is happening downward, but then inhalation has not yet happened. Apanastvam gate prana. Yavat abhyutito hridihi tavat sa kumbhakavastha. That gap between that is supposed to be kumbhakavastha. And then yogibhi ya anubhuyate. You are almost like without any prana, without any apana, without any breath, between that gap between the exhalation and inhalation. This is what we were discussing about that in the case of Patanjali Yoga Sutras also. That after the exhalation, before inhalation, that gap is there. That gap is a yogi is somebody who anubhuyate, that means he enjoys that. So one who holds on to that, for him, this cycle, he can be free himself from that cycle. He can free himself from the cycle of prana and apana, or not only this cycle, but all other cycles also that he can free himself from. That quiet state in between is a pure chetana, a chetana which has not yet manifested in the form of prana, a chetana which has not yet modified itself into the prana, but it's a pure chetana. Rechakaha purakaschaiva kumbhakaschatritha stitaha bahyabhyantaras cheti tatta lakshanani lakshitaha. So this puraka, rechaka, in between whatever that kumbhaka is there, and they are characterized by the attrition, external and internal. And this Chirajivitaka, this is what is the Chirajivita Karanam. He says that Avyagraha asmin vyapare bahyam pariharan manaha dinehe katipaya ireva param apnoti kevalam. Study in this practice when you are there, avoiding external contact, the mind attains a supreme state absolutely, merely the matter of days. Param apnoti kevalam. This kevala sthiti, and he reaches that katipaya ireva. So whatever that quiet state that you get, you will get to establish in that state. That means you are not, you don't have any urge to inhale. You don't have any urge to inhale. So when you are in that state, for us what happens is that little while that immediately you have to inhale, otherwise that you feel so miserable. You have to inhale. We struggle for that. Whereas he doesn't have any urge to inhale. This is what in the pranaspanda nirudyate. Esha hi chitta vishrantihi maya prana samathinaha kramena nena samprapya swayam Atmane Nirmale. This can only be achieved by purifying the chitta, purifying. You are there in the Nirmale Atmane. That means to say there is no mala, pure Atma that is there. That's what is the state when you reach it. Eshahi chitta vishrantihi maya prana samadhinaha. By this method of bringing together, accomplishing the prana and apana, this repose of the mind in the strainless self was indeed obtained by me spontaneously. So Vishnu now tells to Vasishtha that I reach at that state of prana, pure state of mind. That means to say mind itself completely dissolved state. Prana apana, the urge to prana, that means to inhale, is not there. I'm just quiet. Nabhutam nabhavishyancha chintayami kadachana dushtimalambhyatishtami vartamana ihatmana. So nabhutam nabhavishyancha chintayami kadachana. No past and no future. That quiet state that you are there. Exhalation is already in the past. Inhalation is in the future. Bhuta is the exhalation. Then bhavishya is the inhalation. And in between that quiet state is that I am the state of vartamana. So chintayamasa kadachana. What is there to think about it? I'm just being in the present. Drishtimalambhya tishtami vartamanam ihatmana. Vartamanam tishtami. I'm in the present, ever in the present. And that's what is the state of Atmani. So, natushyati shubha praptau nashu ashubheti kityate mano mama samam nityam tena jivatmanamaya. So, that means to say, when you are in the present, natushyati shubha praptau, that means to say something good that happens, it doesn't elate me, and na ashubheti khidyate, ashubha, something loss happens, does not make me feel sad. Mano mama samam nityam. My mind is, the present is the state where the manas is completely samaha. The sama is a very beautiful word. It's in a state of tranquility, state of peace, and it does not have any ripple to come out of it. Tena jivatmana amayaha. And one become the jivatma. I'm free from Jivatma, I'm the Jivatma, Anamayaha. That means to say, I just don't have any disease. Disease is the sage, disease itself is, it's not the question of disease, but the question of disease, past and present itself is the future itself, they are the diseases. Being present is the freedom from disease. Ayam bandhu, paraschayam, mamayam, ayamanyata, iti brahman, na janami, terasmi chirajivitaha. This one is this ayam bandhuhu, this is my own, and paraschayam, this is somebody who's stranger to me. Mamayam ayamanyata, this is mine, this is not mine. Iti brahman na janami, I just don't have anything like that. I don't have anything. Terasmi chirajivitaha. I'm just living, being one with that. See, the whole idea is that Brahman is supposed to be Satchitananda. Sat means existence. See, we have something existing is on us, whereas you yourself become existence. When does it become that you are your existence itself? It is that existence is not outside of you in the form of some object or the other. Something or the other, including the body. The body itself is something which is outside of you. Prana itself is something outside of you. Apana is something outside of you. But then that gap that is there in between in the form of kumbhaka that is there, it is supposed to be existence itself. Nayam bandhuhu paraschasmi mamayam ayamanyatha iti brahman najanami tenasmin charajivita asha pasha vinirjukta chitta vritti samahitaha samsparsham nadanam yat yantaha tena jivatmanamayaha etatto kathitam brahman yathasmin chirajivitaha. So this chirajivitaha, that means to say I am living for eternity. This Chirajivitaha is a set of sutras that Brihat Yoga Vasishtha gives, more than about 10 shlokas which talks about various ways of Shiva Sthirajivita. Here, in the selected sources, there are only 2-3 shlokas that are there. Asha Pasha Vinunnayaha, that means to say, I do not allow any ideas of the Asha Pasha, that is the bondage of that. Chitta Vritte Samahitaha. Chitta Vritti has become quietened. Samsvarsham Nadadam Yantaha. Nothing really attaches to me. I don't allow anything to attach me. Tena Jivatmana Manaha. So that means to say, at that moment, I have become one of the Jivatma. Because of that, I become Jivatma. Etatte Kathitam Brahman Yathasmin Chirajivita. By having this has been narrated to you as to how I have Chirajivita, I have long lived. That was a question of Vasishtha for Bhushundu. What makes you to see for long? I said, I don't have any, therefore I live for long. Aho prokta tavodantaha param vismaya karanam eva mukta tamatyantaha maya bhuyo divam gatam. Oh, your account has been told, since it is the cause of great wonder. Thus having spoken and having bidden farewell to him, I went again to heaven. So it's about the previous time when one time that when he met Bhushundu, whatever that Vasishtha's experience with Bhushundu, dialogue with Bhushundu, that's what he's sharing with Rama. So therefore, after the account has been told, since it is the cause of great wonder, after having spoken and having bidden farewell to him, I went back to heaven. Yate Krita Yugasyadau Punaha Tenasmi Sangataha Madhye Treta Yugasyantaha Jataha Tvam Ripusudanaha. Punaradhyashtame Varshe Tatraivoparapi Bhubhrutaha Milito Bhutaha Bhushindote Tathaiva Jara Rupavan. Again, in the beginning of, see, this happened in Treta Yuga. Again, this beginning of the Krita Yuga, then it has been elapsed. I have met him again. And destroyer of enemies, you are born in the midst of the Treta Yuga. Hey, Rama, destroyer of enemies. You are born in the Treta Yuga, but then I met him in the Krita Yuga. Again, in the 8th year now, it is of the current age, Bhushundu was met by me. Now, long time back, in this particular Yuga, again I met him on the mountain, and there itself, possessing the same form as before, not subject to old age. You know, and Vasishtha says that he has seen him that time, he has seen him that time in Krita Yuga. And in this Yuga, beginning, he saw him. That means, what about Vasishtha? He is not Vasishtha, is living forever. See, these are the beautiful things that we need to understand, that Puranas do not have anything like limitations of that. The message is more important. The message is more important, that it's not the question of, as I always say, it's not the question of how long that we live, but what's the question of how peacefully that we live. That's what is important. That's what, and it's not the question of how many times that you meet Bhushundu, how many times you meet Rama. Probably we also met Bhushundu sometime, we also met Rama in somewhere or the other, sometime or the other. We may not have memory, but then we are the cycle that's going on. So this is what is the way, the idea of yugas that is there in the Puranas, idea of all these Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga coming up and all those things, and then how Kali Yuga, and then goes through the cycle. The whole idea is that the small cycle at the simple level inside that we have, when you are in the deep sleep state, the simple cycle that's going on in the form of prana apana, and its extension, its expansion is the one which is going on in the form of not only the birth and death, not only the seasons, but also the whole yugas that are going through, the whole creation going into the dissolution and coming up. So all that is nothing but pranaspanda. So small, like the way small little lamp that you take, it is nothing but the same sunlight. But for our utility that we have this small lamp, it is useful for us. We don't require the sun in the night. We require that lamp. We use that. Similarly, deep inside in our heart, in our chest and all those things, all that what we require is a simple pranaspandana. But we should know that the same pranaspandana that's there within us is the one which is there for the whole creation that is there. And this is what is the Puranic story. Idam te katitam chitram bhushundo nantamuttamam bhushunda udanta uttam Shrutva vicharya chevantaha yat yuktam tat samacharaha. Thus, having been narrated to you the wonderful, excellent history of Bhushandu, having heard and examined it within yourself, do what's proper. So do what you need to do. Slow down your prana. Hold on to that gap between the exhalation and inhalation, that kumbhaka, because that's a state where you are free yourself from that prana. So this is what is the instruction of Vasishtha, the name of Bhushandu. So that completes the Bhushandu Upakhyanam. Then the worship, Devarchana Vidhanam, and followed by, there's another very beautiful, interesting, and that's what is Shikidvaja, the story of Shikidvaja. So let's look into those things as we go further ahead. So we'll stop it here for today, the discussion on Bhushandu Upakhyanam from the Yoga Vasishtha. Thank you. Om Tat Sat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.